This episode is brought to you by PayPal. These days, choices are everywhere. Like, for instance, the milk in your coffee. Would you like it from a cow? A nut? A tree? Everyone wants options. And now your customers have a new option in the way they pay with PayPal in person. Just generate your unique QR code in the PayPal app for them to scan and start accepting PayPal in person today. Learn more at paypal.com/us/getQRcode.
Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at CoreyJoel, CorryJoel, and also read my regular CBSSports.com column called Agent's Take on NFL Contract and Salary Cap Matters. This week we're going to take a look at the Julio Jones situation in some detail and his expected trade from the Atlanta Falcons. We got some interesting TV last Monday on Fox Sports 1 when Undisputed co-host Shannon Sharp had a phone call with Julio Jones, and on air, Jones said, "I'm out of there." The consensus opinion is that Jones didn't know he was live on air at the time when he said that, because the conversation was really casual. If he did know, maybe it was a deliberate strategy by his agent, longtime agent Jimmy Sexton. But the consensus opinion is that he was kind of blindsided by that. It also came out after this appearance that Jones had requested a trade back in March, so that would explain the "I'm out of there" comment. The Falcons have been listening to trade offers, and maybe that's in response to Julio requesting a trade, and that dates back to before the draft. One of the reasons that they want to get rid of Julio Jones is their cap problems. According to NFLPA data, they have a little over $250,000 of cap room right now, haven't signed any of their draft picks, and can't sign draft picks because of that, because they don't have cap room. To be exact, they have $285,693 of cap space. So the collective first year or 2021 cap numbers for the draftees that they have will be $13,048,199. Now, because of the way the offseason accounting works, where only top 51 cap numbers matter, or salaries, should say, which are basically cap numbers matter in the offseason, then the net change once they get all the draft picks signed is going to be $6,224,912. So roughly they're going to be, not roughly, they're going to be about $6.5 million over the cap once they sign their draft picks. So that's why they'd want to trade Julio Jones, because they've restructured practically every contract under the sun to create cap room, because they had one of the worst cap situations going into the offseason. And two they haven't touched, Julio Jones's and Grady Jarrett's. Those are two big ones they haven't touched. Now, any trade for Julio Jones isn't going to take place before June 2nd, which is Wednesday, and that's because of the way the salary cap rules work, that if you release or trade a guy prior to June 2nd, then all the bonus proration in future years accelerates onto the current salary cap. So they want to avoid that in this case, because Julio has the biggest wide receiver cap number right now at $23.05 million. His deal he signed a 3-year, $66 million extension in 2019 when he had 2 years left on his existing contract, to put him under contract for 5 total years for $87.026 million. But 3-year extension, $66 million. That's the new money in the deal. $25 million signing bonus, also an $11 million option bonus. The signing bonus is prorated $5 million for each of the 5 years. The option bonus is prorated $2.75 million per year, 20 through 2023. So if you did a trade before June 2nd, then you're going to have $23.25 million as a cap charge, or dead money, which is a salary cap charge for someone who is no longer on the roster. So doesn't benefit the Falcons to do any trade before June 2nd, which is just a couple of days away anyway. Now, if you trade him after June 2nd, this also applies to guys who are released, that the Falcons are going to pick up $15.3 million of cap room, which is his fully guaranteed salary this year. That's because the bonus proration, you got $15.5 million of bonus proration from 22 and 23. That would be a 2022 cap charge. The $7.75 million of bonus proration associated with 2021 would be the only cap charge. Julio has 3 years left on the contract for $28.326 million, making $15.3 million this year, $11.513 million next year. $2 million of that is fully guaranteed in 2022. $11.513 million in 2023. Julio has one of the most front-loaded contracts I have ever seen in terms of an extension. So if the Falcons do end up pulling the trigger on a trade, they basically paid him $27.674 million more than they would have if they had done nothing, and they would have gotten no new years off of the contract. So the Falcons aren't in a fire sale mode, even though Jones is 32, coming off of one of his worst statistical seasons of his career. He had played 9 games. He had lingering hamstring problems, limited him to 9 games. In those 9 games, 51 catches for 771 yards and 3 touchdowns. His 6-year streak of 1,000 receiving yard seasons ended. Still ranked 7th in the NFL with 85.7 receiving yards per game, which was also the worst mark of his career since 2012. Now, look at Julio's production at the halfway mark of the year. He played 6 games. And in those 6 games, he was averaging 97.3 yards, receiving yards per game. So through the first 8 games of the season, he only played 3 in the second half of the season. That's better than his career average of 95.5 receiving yards per game, which is the best in NFL history. Second is Megatron, Calvin Johnson, at 86.1. So his 85.7 over the full season is top 5 of all time as an average, just for a career average. So 97.3 was third. You had Devontae Adams, who'd also missed 2 games, 112.5 at that point, and DK Metcalf at 98.6. So it's not like this guy is just falling off of a cliff. Yeah, he's not a guy that's going to practice all the time. So that's going to be a concern. He had the foot problem, which has been an issue. Supposedly has been something he's had to work around. But this guy's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I know he's 32, but the Falcons want a first-round pick for him. So some of these things teams are looking at it. Well, I want to get a first-round pick, age, history. But you're not talking about a guy who has taken a precipitous decline. Supposedly, according to Pro Football Talk, the Falcons could have gotten a second-round pick. I'm assuming that would have been a 22 second-round pick prior to the draft in a trade which wouldn't have been finalized until post-June 1 because of the salary cap treatment. Part of the reason why the Falcons wouldn't want to take a second-round pick, a couple of years ago, middle 2019 season, they traded the number 2 receiver to the Patriots. Mohamed Sanu got a second-round pick. That would be more of an Arthur Blank problem than a Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith problem, because they're in their first year were just hired. And they gave up a second and a fifth to get Hayden Hurst after Hunter Henry left to go be the Browns tight end. So that may be one of the reasons why they're thinking they need a first for Julio as well. But that draft choice compensation is going to be one of the trickier matters in this deal. So if you're talking about 32 to 34-year-old receivers, then what could you expect? That may be one thing you got to look at. One, if you're going to bring Julio Jones in, you're probably not bringing him in to be, he's just definitely going to be a 2 because he still has the ability, I think, for now, to be a number 1 receiver. Out of in NFL history, from ages 32, 33, and 34, those are years he's still under contract, you've had 74 instances of players getting 1,000 yards, 72 by receivers. And you've had instances of, I think it was 49 times that people have gotten over 80 catches in those ages. Now, Julio was probably going to go to Hall of Fame, first ballot. So you still think his decline isn't going to be overnight. Now, from ages 32 to 34, to have 1,000-yard seasons in each year, you're 32 to 34. That don't happen too often. It's happened 6 times. Marvin Harrison did it. Jerry Rice did it. Chris Carter did it. Charlie Joyner did it. Larry Fitzgerald did it. Tim Brown did it. And, surprisingly, Donald Driver did it. So that's 1,000 yards in 3 straight years. So it would not. I would still think Julio has that ability. Now, the crazy thing is, in 1995, a 33-year-old Jerry Rice set an NFL record at the time with 1,848 receiving yards. That's just insane. Now, if you're talking about guys who had 80 catches for three straight seasons, ages 32 to 34, there are only 3 of those guys. Larry Fitzgerald, Jerry Rice, Marvin Harrison. So, see if he could be in that category.
I'm Amanda Klutz, Broadway actress, dancer, and celebrity trainer, and I partnered with Equinox to create a custom AK rope class. It's a rhythmic group fitness experience, and music is an integral component. Jump and sculpt using the rope in ways you've never imagined. It's time to get back to moving our bodies. AK Rope, my signature class, now available at Equinox, is a safe, fun, and positive way to do just that.
What's up? It's Mike Jones from the Football Jones podcast. I know you're enjoying your time with Inside the Cap, but once you're done, I want to invite you to come over and check out my podcast. Each week, we take a deep dive into some of the most pressing topics around the NFL. High-profile guests from the coach, player, and front office ranks, as well as the top league insiders. Check out the Football Jones podcast, another fine product brought to you by Empire Media.
In terms of the whole compensation, which is the first piece of the puzzle, and then there are other parts which make this not the easiest potential trade. If I'm Atlanta, if I'm not happy with the compensation, I'm going to hold on to him for a while. I might hold on to him hoping there's an injury and then trade him training camp, preseason, and then Julio's got to decide, do I want to report and get or not, and miss camp, get a $50,000 per day fine that's mandatory if he gets to that, or I'm going to play him into the season, see how it goes, and if we're not doing well, hopefully he's the Julio that he's been pretty much in the past, then trade him then. That might be when you get your best value. Or you got to be creative on the draft choice compensation. Maybe it's a conditional second. Because I wouldn't just do it for a second if I'm the Falcons. That's just me. It may end up being that. Maybe it's a second and a conditional fifth. Maybe it's a conditional second and a day 3 pick, where the second round pick can become a first based on what Julio does in 2021. Now, what would be a fair threshold to have the pick escalate? 1, I'd say if he gets the Pro Bowl. 2, you could look at the production of what Pro Bowl receivers has been over the past 3 years. This the guys on the original ballot who were originally selected to the Pro Bowl, not the guys who play as replacement players when there is a Pro Bowl game. And if you look at the production in each year of the Pro Bowl guys and then average it, it's 100 catches and just under 1,325 receiving yards. Now, Julio has escalators in his contract, $3 million in 2022 and 2023. And the individual season escalators, his thresholds are 100 catches for 1,400 receiving yards. Now, we've already seen for ages 32 through 34 that the production isn't all that great. Now, let's say it's 1,200 yards. For 1,200 yards, you've got 13 guys who've done that at age 32. You've got 13 who've done it for age 32. So it drops tremendously. And you've got 24 over time who've done it 1,200 yards from ages 32 through 34. So maybe that's the threshold, because that's a pretty high threshold to reach. Or maybe you make it 1,275 yards, since we now have a 17th game. Then you got 80 catches as well. Maybe that goes to 85 catches. Now, there's only one guy for all 3 years who's had 1,200 receiving yards or more. That's Jerry Rice, and 80 catches in all 3 years. So maybe that would be the appropriate threshold. Now we got to find suitors for Julio Jones. Well, if you look at the teams who have the most cap room, some of these teams don't necessarily match up with who would have the greatest need for a wide receiver. So it's going to be kind of not the easiest thing to find the perfect suitor for Julio Jones. Now, if you look at just straight cap room, Jaguars have the most cap room in the NFL. According to NFLPA data, they got just a little over $38.65 million, but they had the first pick for a reason. They're not good, and Julio said he wants to play for a winner. The New York Jets have the second most cap room. They've got $27.4 million. That second pick for a reason. Not good. Cincinnati Bengals, another team, isn't very good. They have $22.154 million in cap room. Then you got the Cleveland Browns. They've got $20.4 million in cap space right now. And for some of these teams, they still have signed draft picks, so it's there but not there. They've got Odell Beckham Jr., and they've got Jarvis Landry as receiver. The Los Angeles Chargers, just a shade under 19.4 cap room. Mike Williams on the fifth-year option. Keenan Allen over $20 million per year. Got that stud young quarterback, the offensive rookie of the year from last year, Justin Herbert. Broncos, same boat as them, just about 19.4 cap room. Carolina Panthers, about 18.2. 49ers, just under 17.7. Detroit Lions, basically 17.4. And the Washington football team, just under 17.2. Those are teams that have cap space, but some of those aren't going to be suitors. Now, Vegas has been taking odds on where Julio's going to play next. No, I shouldn't say necessarily Vegas, because you got sports betting, no longer just restricted to Vegas. But Sportsline has had odds as of Friday. The Patriots plus 200. These are best odds. 49ers plus 300. Titans plus 400. Raiders plus 600. Ravens plus 700. And you had the Chargers plus 900. Now, DraftKings had their odds at Patriots at plus 450, Titans plus 500, Rams plus 500, Falcons to stay put plus 600, Chargers plus 900. So some of the teams that have the best odds don't have cap space either. So it's kind of something's got to give. Then we had some reports which came out today. Titans are now, according to some NFL insiders or teams, that the Titans are the expected landing spot if he's traded. And then we had a report from ESPN, Diana Rossini, who had a report earlier, late last week, that there's a first-round pick on the table for Julio Jones. And now the Seahawks are supposedly going to make a play for Julio. That Russell Wilson and Julio have been talking about wanting to play together. Now, I'm a little skeptical on this one, just from the standpoint. They just paid Tyler Lockett, gave him a 4-year extension, averaging $17.3 million per year. They have DK Metcalf on the other side. Maybe that Seattle's talked to the Falcons. Maybe that was just an obligatory phone call to placate Russell Wilson, just because of that particular situation. Though he was unhappy, so if we do our due diligence, it's going to be, and we don't get him, then maybe that's enough to keep Russell happy. Problem is Seattle has $6.9 million of cap room. So they can't right now absorb a $15.3 million salary of Julio Jones, because when you make a trade for someone, you have to have enough cap room to take on their salary. That's why it's important to look at the cap room of the teams, because I don't know how you're going to have to either restructure contracts, or the Falcons are going to have to eat salary on the way out the door, which they're probably not going to want to do because they don't have cap room to begin with. They can't really take back players because they don't have cap room, so it won't be a vet for big cap number in salary. It'd have to be, if they're going to take back any players, it's got to be a guy on a rookie contract. He's got presumably a couple of years left because he's got a low salary in the deal, particularly if he's a day 3 pick. So that's another thing that's problematic with the whole Russell Wilson trade. Julio Jones trade.
This episode is brought to you by Simply by Frito-Lay. You have enough on your plate, but now there's one less thing to overthink with Simply by Frito-Lay. It's your favorite Frito-Lay snacks with ingredients to feel good about, like Simply Blue Corn Tostitos, Sea Salted Ruffles, and White Cheddar Cheetos Puffs. All made with no artificial flavors or colors. So enjoy what you love and look for Simply brand snacks online or at a store near you.
Hey there, it's John Keim of the John Keim Report podcast. I'm glad you're enjoying the Inside the Cap podcast with Joel Corey. When you're done, I invite you to listen to my podcast. Twice a week, my guests and I discuss the Washington football team and the NFL. The show features numerous NFL insiders, former and current players and executives, and taps into the insight gained in my 25-plus years covering this franchise. Check out the John Keim Report, another fine product offered by Empire Media.
Now, the only team which is among the clubs that have the most cap space and also the best odds for Julio Jones is the Chargers. Even though they have a couple of draft picks to sign, they're still going to be okay. The Niners are on both, but their cap space isn't quite what you think it is. They still haven't signed Trey Lance, third overall pick. So once they sign their draft picks out of the top 51, works, they have like $12.26 million in cap space, so they're not quite there. Then if you look at some of the teams with the best odds in terms of cap space, on the surface, New England, $14.78 million, almost enough for Julio's salary, but they haven't signed some draft picks like Mac Jones. Once you sign the draft picks, they're at 12.34, just under that. Titans still have some draft picks to sign. 3.9 of cap space. Once the factor in the draft picks, $3.55 million. Rams, another team. Some draft picks still outstanding. About $6.85 million of cap space. It drops to $6.633. The Raiders, they've signed their first round pick, Alex Leatherwood, last week. Still a couple of draft picks to go. And after signing Leatherwood, they have about $4.075 million of cap space. That's going to be a little over $3.375 if you factor in what's going to be needed for the draft picks. The Ravens have about a little under $9.4 million cap space. Once you get the draft picks, all of them signed, which would matter in the top 51, it's going to be about $8.15 million cap space they would have. So that means one or two things has to happen. That Falcons have to eat some salary on the way out where you convert signing bonus salary into signing bonus, like the Panthers did with Teddy Bridgewater when they traded him to Denver. They ate, I think it was $7 million in a pre-trade salary conversion. Or the other team's going to have to restructure some contracts. Third way, which I think is improbable, is Julio Jones deciding, I'm going to play for less money and take a pay cut. Because this is a guy who in 2018 was unhappy with his contract when the market hadn't materially moved, had 3 years left, wanted a new deal. They shifted money from back end in later years into the current year, gave him a small bump to placate him, then he did a deal with 2 years left. Could be wrong, but Julio doesn't strike me as I'm going to take a pay cut to leave. Maybe if you want to get out of town at all costs, you would, but I think it's more likely Julio's may have amnesia on how the contract is structured. I had clients who were like that when I was an agent, would forget that huge signing bonus that was front-loaded. his is extremely front-loaded, and only focus on what's left at hand in the contract, and then compare that to deals which are done later. And I was like, yeah, I can't necessarily do that if you're going to be a little disingenuous if you do that. So Julio may be looking at it, hey, I'm making less than $13 million per year over the last 3 years. If anything, I need a raise. But he doesn't have no trade clause, so he can't stop where he goes. There's a way he could stop it because it's been done. I'm not going to put any names to it, but trades can be stopped with a high-profile player. If the agent puts it out, he don't want to be there, he's not going to report, or he may retire. Then the trading team probably think twice about putting him in a place he doesn't want to go. Now, there is something else that could be done as well, in addition, which could help. And it's a concept which was in Kiko Alonso's contract when he was traded from Miami to the Saints. The roster cut down in 2019. That before he was traded, there's some other things going on with him. That there was the Dolphins ate a small point of salary, about $1 million. He took a small pay cut, but they moved money from 2019 into a 2020 roster bonus. So it would lower the cap hit for the Saints when they were acquiring him. You still got the money because it was put into a fully guaranteed roster bonus, March roster bonus. So he was still getting the money, it was just delayed. So Julio could do that. So we'll stay with the Patriots since they are still a preferred landing spot, at least by the odds. Let's say you took $5.3 million of his $15.3 million base salary, shifted it into a first day of the 2020 league year roster bonus. There'd be guaranteed fully guaranteed 5 days after the trade. Couldn't be fully guaranteed with the trade, otherwise it gets prorated, and that proration would stay with Atlanta. So you have to have there are three types of guarantees to be fully guaranteed in NFL contract: skill, injury, and salary cap guarantees. So if you had two of the three immediately, and then the third guarantee kicking in 5 days later, then that's a Patriots cap charge. So it would also mean that his salary in 2022 would go from $11.513 million to $16.83 million. So that's what would happen, but it lowers the cap hit for the team needing to, if they have a tight cap situation, not enough cap room. Another thing you'd have to do is with the 17th game, players had contracts who predated the CBA and they don't make a material change, where if you just do a simple contract restructure and you're still on the roster or injured reserve as of the 17th game, you get an extra game check, which would be the prorated amount of your base salary. So since this would be a material change, you'd have to account for the fact in his contracts there'd be a $900,000 17th game roster bonus payment for being on the 9-man roster for the 17th game, and then $677,235 in 22 and 2023 as well. Otherwise, he's going to be in a worse position than if he doesn't touch the contract. So he shouldn't be penalized for that. Carson Wentz shifted some money from 2021 into a roster bonus in 2022. So they had to do the same thing where they had to give him 1/17 of his what was his base salary in a game check to in a roster bonus to keep him in the same position as he is. Now, I'm going to go back to what you'd have to do for a couple of these teams. Now, the Titans, since they're a team which is now rumored to be a favorite, if the Falcons aren't going to eat any money or don't want to eat any money, then your best source to get cap room is Ryan Tannehill. He's got a $24.5 million base salary. He's under contract through 2023. Two ways you could do that. You could just cut his base salary down to, let's say, 1.5. Add 2 voidable dummy years, 2024 and 2025, like people are doing this year, because the cap dropping from 182.5 to 182.5 from 198.2. Then you got 23. You can convert into signing bonus, stretch it out over 5 years. You could pick up $18.4 million of cap room this way. You got enough for Julio. Or if you don't want to do the dummy years, you take his base down to $1.25 million. You got $23.25 million to play with. You can pick up $15.5 million of cap room doing that. Thing is, he's already got a $34 million cap hit in 2022, 32 in 2023. You raise his cap numbers to 41.75 and 39.75. So that's one way you could do it. Like the Niners, for Julio to get the extra cap room, if you wanted to do, and you didn't want to do the part where you shift money to a roster bonus, then Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you want to touch that or leave it alone? He's got the $21.4 million base salary. Do you make a small conversion so you're not going to pick up so much cap space next year? The Rams have basically restructured practically everybody. One thing they didn't do when they got Matthew Stafford is they let his $10 million roster bonus hit on the 5th day. So he's only has a $9.5 million base salary. So if you did the dummy years thing with him, take his base salary down to league minimum, $1.075 million, you're going to pick up $6.74 million of cap room. Still doesn't get you all the way there. Now, there's another way you could do it creatively in terms of lowering what you need to take on for cap space and salary in 2021, which would be adding a option bonus after 2021, which would have to be exercised in the first 3 days of 2022. Add 2 voiding dummy years in 2024 and 2025. That's what the option would be to exercise. And the Eagles have done this before with contracts and a restructure added to voiding dummy years. Since the option takes place in 2022, should be no cap consequences to the Falcons, should be to the acquiring team. So one way you could do this, what I'm proposing, is Julio makes 5.3 in 2021. Has a $10 million option. And ensure it's exercised, you raise his base salary to $21.513 million. And there are no offsets with the $10 million. Just fully guarantee it to 21.53 with no offset. And then he's already got $2 million as a guarantee in 2022. Then the $2 million has an offset. If you exercise it, the salary reduces back to $11.53 million. That would ensure they're going to exercise it. That way, the cap hit you need to acquire him is $5.3 million this year. Atlanta's not eating salary. And it means this cap hit instead in 2022 isn't going to be 11.513. It's going to be 14.013, and also in 2023 as well. And 2024 and 2025 void last day of the 2023 league year. So in 2024, you have a $5 million dead money charge. And getting back to the first way you do it, just the roster bonus in 2022, that would be no offset with the roster bonus. Just in case something went wrong. That may be, or it could be a combination where the Falcons eat a small portion of salary, not much, and it's one of these two ways with the shifting money in the roster bonus, the Kiko Alonso way, or either the option bonus concept. That may be how you have to get creative. Now, another thing you could do creatively when we get back to the trade compensation is something I'd like to see, a two-way conditional if you couldn't agree on hard compensation at the beginning. Let's say, hypothetically, the trade compensation is a second and a fifth. You got the escalator to a first if it's a Pro Bowl, if he goes to the Pro Bowl, or let's say 85 catches or 1,200 yards. It becomes a first-round pick. And let's say he didn't do what he did last year. He can't reach those statistics. Then maybe the fifth-round pick goes away. It's voided out because he can't do 51 catches or 771 yards. Now, one thing with the trade compensation is the 49ers, if the Falcons are insisting on a first-round pick, 49ers don't have a first-round pick in 2022 or 2023. Rams never have first-round picks, none in 2021, 2022, or 2023. Seahawks don't have a first-round pick in 2022 either because of Jamal Adams trade. So there are a lot of moving parts to this thing. So if I can't get what I want I'm holding on to him. And then what are the Falcons going to do for cap space? Well, you don't really want to touch Julio's contract if you're going to ultimately trade him. That means you got to go to Grady Jarrett. And Grady Jarrett has, among defensive tackles, the second largest 2021 cap number at $20,833,333. Signed a 4-year, $68 million contract as a franchise player in 2019. He has 2 years left on his contract. So let's say you chop his base salary down to $1 million. Then you convert $12.5 million of the $13.5 million base salary into signing bonus. You add 3 dummy voiding years, 2023 through 2025. You're going to get $10 million of cap space there. That's going to cover the $6.5 you need for the draft picks, of where you'll be once you have the draft picks in the top 51. Obviously, once September 9 comes around, first day of the league year, when everything counts, you still may not be there in terms of being under the cap. But that would just take you for now. Now, the other thing is just do an extension with them with 2 years left. He was already at 17 as a franchise player. Market's moved. He's a Pro Bowler who can get to the quarterback, stuffs the run, has pass rushing ability. You're probably not getting him for less than Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams, franchised as defensive tackle in 2019, got franchised the second time, even though he filed a grievance to be defensive end, which he ended up dropping after he got the new contract from the Giants, which was $63 million over 3 years, averages $21 million a year, $45 million fully guaranteed, and this was in March. So you're not signing Grady Jarrett for less than $20 million per year in new money on the extension. So he just has 2 years left. Let's say you do a 3-year extension. Give him a $20 million signing bonus, drop the base salary down to $1 million. You're going to pick up $8.5 of cap room immediately. You're still covered.
This episode is brought to you by the NBA. Witness mind-bending competition on the biggest stage between the best players in the world, a place where legends are made. It's impossible jumps that seem to freeze in midair, and spectacular steals that you didn't see coming. It's that one play that lasts seconds that you will talk about for the rest of your life. And let's face it, it's the unpredictability of it all, never knowing when the next big moment will happen. Huge wins and crushed dreams. It's the drama of it all. You just can't make this stuff up. That's the NBA. That's game. The NBA playoffs are happening right now. Don't miss all the action.
It will be interesting to see how quickly Julio Jones gets traded, because I'm assuming he's not going to be a Falcon. Does this thing drag on into training camp? If he's not traded next week, I suspect Julio's not showing up for the minicamp. He'll take the $93,000 fine for the 3 days. Maybe they won't even. Well, it's not mandatory. It's at the team's election. Maybe they shouldn't fine him if they're going to trade him. But sometimes teams do. But those are kind of the major points with any Julio Jones trade and some of the problems and pitfalls that could come up. But one, trade compensation may be tough to agree upon. Falcons are probably thinking this is Julio Jones that can still play at an extremely high level. They don't want to be in a Randy Moss situation when he left Oakland, went for a fourth after 2 down years and his effort was questioned, and then plays like the old Randy Moss in Minnesota. So trade compensation, some of the teams that have first-round picks wanting to get more than a second. That's one issue. Cap space is another issue. The teams don't necessarily have the cap space to absorb the $15.3 million salary. Falcons probably don't want to eat money on the way out the door, so you have to be creative in terms of the contract. If that's a deal breaker for the Falcons, then you got to do the Kiko Alonso thing with the trade, which is move money into a roster bonus so that the 2021 salary is lower for the team, the acquiring team, or that option bonus concept, or it could be even lower. But there's a trade-off to that the cap number in at least 2022, depending upon which way you go, and if you go the option bonus, would be higher than just the $5.3 million salary that he has left on the deal. So that's going to be it for this week. Probably more than you ever wanted to know about Julio Jones, but want to do a deep dive into it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, you can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That is CORRYJOEL. And also read my CBSSports.com column, Agent's Take. And we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.